Today on the podcast, we welcome Dana Ernst, and we discussed a bunch of different things, but we really dove into the Verde Valley Randonnee, or the Randonnee, or the Randonnee. But really, it's just an overall impressive loop. What are you laughing at? Anyway, I'm super excited to welcome Dana to the podcast. First ever episode, and he did an amazing job, which it just flowed naturally, and Dana should honestly be running a podcast. But yeah, I hope you enjoy this video. It's gonna be the new YouTube channel. It's gonna be where I post all of the audio and the videos to my podcast. So if you hear any crying in any of the podcasts, we did get a new baby. We got it at the store, Ace Hardware. Buy one, get one free. We only wanted one. There was only one redhead left, and we snagged her. Yeah, we're super excited and super excited about this venture with the Stoked podcast. And so, help me welcome Dana to the podcast, and I'll switch over to the Zoom video now. Peace out. Enjoy. So this is all from your wife. I had Jen send me a little intro that no one knows about you. And to top it, when Dana is out in the middle of nowhere one day riding his bike, it is going to be not just a broken spoke or a crash that leaves carnage bringing him down. It is going to be a fist-sized rock on a hike-a-bike section that he bumps his toes. Is that true?
It's all true. Yeah, that's great.
That is so funny. Kenzie and I, we sat down yesterday and I was reading it and did not expect that at all. And it's so funny. And Kenzie, I have a toe issue too.
Yeah, that's funny.
I broke 2 toes and it was like the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, my toes are a mess.
Yeah, same. I don't know what it is about the little tiny toes.
Yeah, not only are they a mess, yeah, for whatever reason, I do flip out if I stub my toe.
Oh yeah. No, it's the worst. Yep. But I thought that was really interesting, because we're acquaintances. I say we're friends, but we just haven't ridden together at all,
Right. Yeah.
And so it was kind of interesting hearing your backstory with, your dad and those road trips. Was he an animal? Like, he?
Yeah, my dad was an animal. So yeah, a little background on my dad. He was inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. Wrestling was like a huge part of his life and certainly my life, not by choice growing up. And he owned a gym for a little while that Lou Ferrigno used to work out at, which is the Incredible Hulk, back in the day. And we had a gym in my garage. Yeah, so it was just like a constant no pain, no gain household growing up. And I spent most of my childhood resenting my dad, being angry at him. But honestly, I wouldn't be where I am today if it hadn't been for him sort of like crushing me all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have video and pictures of bench pressing in campgrounds driving across the country. I have vivid memories of like bench pressing at Lake Tahoe.
No way. That is so crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure every family that walked by was like, what is this crazy family doing? But yeah, it wasn't optional.
Huh. Yeah, that's not probably a normal way to grow up.
Not at all normal. Not at all normal. I mean, it was normal for me at the time, but looking back, I'm like, yeah, that was totally bonkers.
Dang. And was cycling even in the picture at that point?
No. Although, one of the experiences I had with my dad that really shaped my sort of desire to ride bikes is one day my dad was like, because my dad constantly liked challenges and doing things that were ridiculous. He's like, we're going to ride our bikes to your cousin Scott's house, which is maybe 40 miles. I'm not even really sure, but it was, it was an epic day on the bike and it's like massive, huge hill to get up to his house at the end. I don't know how old I was. I was probably maybe a freshman in high school or something. And I hadn't ever ridden that far before, but like, yeah, we just sent it and it was awesome. And that definitely like kind of sparked something in me, but it was a while before I really got into riding bikes. It was probably college sometime before I really got into mountain biking.
Interesting. So, and then in college, was it road, mountain, Because there really wasn't gravel biking.
No, no. So I went to school in Virginia, just outside of DC. Um, at the time, I probably would have called myself a mountain biker. I mean, looking back, I was just a kid who owned a mountain bike who had pictures of John Tomac on my wall in my dorm room, but I didn't ride all that much. I mean, I thought I did, but looking back, I hardly ever went. Um, and I did a couple of races back home in Buffalo, New York. Usually got my ass kicked. So yeah, I got into mountain biking, but I didn't really do it all that much until I moved to Flagstaff the first time after graduating from college. So I moved here the first time in 1997, and then really started mountain biking and sort of figuring out what it was all about and getting my ass handed to me by everybody I went riding with.
Yeah, Flagstaff is probably one of the best spots.
Yeah, and I
And
had
like,
no idea. I mean, I moved here so I could go rock climbing all the time, and and then spent time climbing and riding my bike. Um, and I mean, it was sort of trial by fire. I went riding with people who were way better than me and was literally just trying to like survive and keep up.
that's how you get good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, sweet. And I kind of want to touch base on this new venture that has kind of sparked. And I'm curious, were you the one that kind of came up with this route and this challenge?
Yeah, it was it was my idea. I've been sort of so I also direct this bikepacking race called Pinions and Pines, which I put on every May. That's usually about 300 miles, and it's a mix of dirt roads and single track and double track. And every once in a while, someone tries to show up on a gravel bike, and it's not really probably a good idea. Some people pull it off. But I had been sort of, because of that, I'd been toying with the idea of also putting a route together that was more gravel bike friendly. I had been riding my gravel bike more and more. And so it was in the back of my mind, and I had some ideas for some routes. And then in February of this year, I went and did my first brevet event, which is a, official randonneuring event. These are officially non-competitive events, but they have a certain distance, a designated route, and you just ride at your own pace. And I went down there with Joe Pavlik. It was a 300-kilometer all on pavement and had an absolute blast. But I hated being around all the cars. It just was like, this is awful. I mean, I got buzzed by numerous trucks late in the day when I was tired. So I had an excellent time, but I was like, oh, I'd really like to replicate this kind of experience, but do it on dirt. And so I had already had some ideas for some routes in mind, and I was like, okay, I want to sort of put together a 400-kilometer, 250-mile gravel friendly route that sort of showcases the wide variety of terrain and beauty that we have here in northern Arizona. And so I sort of drew a route on a map and sort of tested it out this summer in August, I think it was. I rode with Eddie Bressler over 2 days, a sort of slightly shorter version of what currently exists. The route's amazing. And so I just put it out there. I put a web page together, put a challenge together. The idea is anybody can ride the route whenever they want. They can start anywhere on the loop they want. They can go either clockwise or counterclockwise. And all they have to do is finish the route, and I'll put their name on the web page and send them a free patch that was designed by Wyatt Spalding. And so, yeah, I just went and did it about a week and a half ago officially myself. I think there's now been 4 finishers. Ezra Ward Packard has done it. Myself and Jacob Miller rode together, and then Dylan Turner rode it just a few days after I did.
Sweet. And I was looking at the webpage, and currently you and Jacob are, well, not that it's a race, and it shouldn't be kind of I mean, some people are definitely going to go into it with the mindset of, I'm going to try to beat Dana, but
Yeah.
also, I'm just curious on the efficiency that, that you rode your bike for 246 miles. And, and so did you, I mean, what was your overall like goal and mindset coming into it?
Yeah. So I wanted to just, I put the route together, and I was looking at my calendar and, watching the days get shorter and shorter. And I was like, I want to just go send this thing before the year ends. I had a bunch of motivations for doing that. I've had some hip issues for the past year, after that 300-kilometer brevet I did in February, I had massive hip pain, and I took from early February until late May off the bike, just doing rehab, trying to get better. It took me forever to figure out what was going on, and then I just said fuck it and started riding again in May. And so I hadn't had like a really big adventure this year. So I was kind of really craving something, an adventure, and given my upbringing, I sort of really wanted to do something I wasn't quite sure if I could do. I've been waffling on having hip surgery for months. Every surgeon I've talked to tells me I really need to have surgery, but I keep thinking, well, I'm able to do this shit. I don't know if I want to have surgery and take 9 months off. And so I've been waffling on it, and I keep thinking, well, I really need to go sort of really see what my hip can handle. And so that was one of my main motivations, was like, can I do this right now? Should I? If I can't, then maybe that's an indication I really need to have surgery. And if I can do it, well, fuck it. Maybe I can just keep doing what I'm doing and just put up with the pain. And so that was one big motivation. I really wanted to just go do something hard and ride my bike all day and have an adventure. Jacob Miller found out about the event, and we hadn't coordinated in advance, but he happened to be doing it the exact same day as me. And so we hooked up to ride together. His motivation was definitely to ride it in under 24 hours. I wasn't sure what what I was really going to do when I started. I was like, all right, my goal is to finish, see how things go with my hip, and maybe I'll shoot for under 24 hours with Jacob. I mean, I'm generally a pretty competitive person, but I also wanted to kind of just play it by ear and sort of see how things went. And so I had in the back of my mind, I wanted to maybe beat Ezra's time, but that wasn't my main priority. I just wanted to finish, have fun, sort of test my mind, and sort of see what my hip could handle. And things went, for the most part, pretty smoothly. Jacob and I were on very different bikes. I was on a gravel bike with, I think, 48-millimeter width tires. He was on a full suspension mountain bike. So there were times when we weren't at all together because we were on completely different rigs. I sort of expected him to ride away from me after a few hours, but we were together the whole time for the most part, yo-yoing back and forth, and really had an awesome day on the bike. It was hard for the last few hours. It was pretty brutal. But my hip held together. It still feels pretty good. It hurt the whole time, but it never really got worse. So I guess I'm going to put surgery off for a little while longer.
It's good. Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
good way to test it. And also,
Yeah.
You're not a normal person to just be like, well, let me see if I need surgery. And really, probably your pain tolerance is much higher than normal. So the
Yeah,
doctors are looking at it on paper going,
yeah.
you should get this fixed.
Yeah,
But
unless I stub my toe.
unless you stub your toe, then you're getting surgery.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
funny. Well, yeah, and then I'm sorry, this microphone. It's like, is it too loud?
I mean, I hear it every once in a while when you move, but it's not so bad.
Okay. The microphone sucks.
Well, once you report this back, you'll decide whether you like it or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so not getting off track. So the last few hours were the hardest, as in any effort, no matter if it's a 3-hour effort or a 23-hour effort, the last hour is usually the worst in any effort.
For me it was like the last 6.
The last 6 hours.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I mean, I really wanted a big challenge, right? And so I've been working a lot on my mindset the last few years, and there's, in my mind, there's 2 ways to sort of exploit the skill set that I've been trying to develop. It's number 1, to sort of keep yourself in a good mindset as long as you can. But then there's the challenges of starting to deal with things when things aren't going the way you want them to, or you start to suffer a little bit. In a lot of ways, I was really hoping things would be really horrible at some point so I could really sort of be in that testing situation. And it went really smoothly for the first 18 hours. Really good mindset. Everything was going smoothly, feeling really good. And then I got really cold, like really fucking cold. And then it got hard. So in the morning when we started at 4 a.m. I don't know how accurate the temperature gauges are on the GPS, because the wind's going over it, but we regularly were seeing low 20s for the first few hours of us riding. And it wasn't that bad. We were bundled up and, not really hammering on the pedals and not getting too wet with sweat. So it was cold, but like it was totally fine. But my water bottles froze like in 45 minutes. And so I didn't really drink anything for the first like 4 hours because my water bottles are completely frozen. But I was really good about eating calories. I have a timer on my GPS. Every 30 minutes, I eat, whether I want to or not. So I'm pretty militant about keeping the calories going, trying to get like 250, 300 calories per hour. And so the morning was cold, but no big deal. In the evening, it was not quite as cold. It was a little bit breezier, but like I was starting to get pretty calorie depleted. And I think my water bottles froze again, maybe with about 4 hours to go.
What time
By
was
that
it?
time, let's see, we finished before 4 a.m. So around midnight,
Okay.
somewhere around Mormon Lake.
Ooh.
I can't remember if my water bottles froze before that or after that. I don't quite remember. But yeah, so then I didn't, and then a lot of my calories were in my bottles. And so I was trying to eat food, but then I refused to take my gloves off, partly because I put hand warmers in there, which didn't help at all. So I wasn't eating, I wasn't drinking for like the last 4 hours, and I was the coldest I've ever been. I mean, temperature wise, it wasn't the coldest, but I was shaking. So like my core was shaking. And every time I went downhill, I was just riding the brakes just so that the wind wasn't cruising over me. I mean, I think easily I could have gone twice as fast over that last 40 miles if I hadn't been so cold. I mean, we were just creeping along. Jake was in much better shape than I was at that point. He wasn't quite as cold as I was. I was in rough shape. I was questioning my sanity, and I wasn't ready to pull the plug at any point in time. But I was like, wow, if I get much colder, this is going to be damn right dangerous.
Yeah.
But I just kept moving on. I was really trying to manage my moisture by unzipping my jacket and zipping it back up and keeping my hands warm. But I was just so cold and moving so slowly. And at that point, you're trying not to look at your GPS because you're like, oh, I'm freezing cold. I'm trying to just maintain this positive mindset. And I've gone a tenth of a mile and I got to do it again and again. And it just takes forever and ever and ever. Because you're 18 hours into this effort. We mostly were moving that whole time, and we took a break in Williams and ate a ridiculous amount of McDonald's, and then we took a break in Camp Verde and ate a more ridiculous amount of McDonald's. But for the most part, we were on the gas and trying to move the whole time and managing our moisture and output in the evening when it got cold. And it was pretty hard. It's like, like everything like that, it's like you're wondering whether you're going to be able to finish, and then you're done and you think immediately, oh, that wasn't so bad.
Exactly. When you're in it,
Yeah.
it's the worst. And then when you're done, you're like, oh, I'm so glad
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah. I mean, there were moments where I was thinking, oh man, this is easily the hardest thing I've ever done. And then as soon as I was done, I was like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Stop being a wimp.
Yeah, exactly. It's like two different people,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it has, and something to say too, with your deficiency, like I'm sure it was only what, 35 degrees, 30 degrees, probably not as cold as when you started, but you just had nothing in your body.
Yeah.
You
no
have
fuel to burn. Yeah.
no. So that's the worst too. I mean, that just makes your pain just that much worse,
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
well, so that was like, and then coming into Flagstaff, the last 40 miles, Mormon Lake, and that's a home stretch. And at any point where you, I know you were questioning pulling the plug, but there are times when you're probably like, all right,
Yeah. I mean, I kept thinking, okay, I'm definitely not calling my wife right now, but if suddenly she just drove by, like in a warm car with a hot cup of coffee, I'd be pretty tempted to get in the car. But at that point, I was like, wow, fuck it, I'm so close. I just gotta suffer in. And at that point, I literally didn't even give a shit what time I finished. It was just like, I just need to survive and get to the end. The last mile home from the bike shop after I was done was the worst, because I was like, fuck, I just want to be in my bed right now.
yeah, you have to go to the bike shop, and you rode home.
I rode home because when it was almost 4 o'clock in the morning, it was 3:20 in the morning or something like that. So, I thought, well, there's a chance my son's awake. I could make him come pick me up. But it was like a mile and a half back to my house. Thankfully, almost all up hills. So I could stay warm on the way up the hill to the house.
Yeah.
funnily, I'm not even sure that's the word. This is funny.
But funnily.
I pulled into my garage, you know, just before 4 o'clock in the morning, and literally the first thing I did was pulled out my phone and ordered a pair of windproof socks.
No way.
I was like, yeah, and I didn't give a shit how expensive they were. My wife gave me a hard time about this later. She's like, you know, you shouldn't make purchases when you're that tired. And I was like, I didn't give a fuck. I needed to know that next time I went out, I was gonna have socks that were gonna keep my feet warm, you know, keep the wind off.
Yeah, so
I
the
had
worst thing was your toes.
well, you know that yeah, funny. That wasn't the worst. My hands are actually in much worse shape. I had other handwear I could have brought but I thought the stuff that I'd packed would have been sufficient. But yeah, my feet were cold, and I thought, you know, if I could get one of these problems solved, that would be pretty nice.
Mhm.
So yeah, I bought some expensive socks
Good.
from Australia.
And it's hard to keep your feet warm cycling.
Yeah.
Because you have just such a small shoe. And so even if you put wool socks on, you have millimeters of material in front of your sock. And depending on what shoe you have, but I mean, I have just like specialized cleats, and no
Yep.
matter in the wintertime how many, I can do a wool sock, shoe, and then a windbreaker like cover over the shoe. Doesn't matter. It's
Yeah.
still freezing.
I had tried to buy a pair of toe covers the night before at REI. I bought the largest size, and then that night when I got home, I tried to put them over my shoe, and they didn't fit in a way that I would expose my cleat to clip in.
Mm.
So that was kind of a heartbreaker. I was like, oh, I thought these toe covers were going to save my life, but I had to leave them at home. They didn't work.
Oh no. And so that brings me into my next curiosity is like, what did you bring? Did you? So
Oh
there's
man,
two
I had
things.
so many,
Yeah,
so much clothes.
Did you
Yeah, go ahead.
expect? Did you expect? You know, to stay longer than 24 hours is like my first question, because that has a huge indicator with, you know, the materials you bring and the equipment. If you're staying, you know, until 9 a.m. the next day, right? If you were just on the bike for 6 more hours, that's a whole, I mean, that might be a bag, right? That you might have to
Yeah.
pull over and put a
Yeah,
bivy on.
you know, I didn't know how long it was going to take because I kind of went into it sort of prepared for whatever. I did not bring stuff to sleep, but I did bring a lot of clothes. In fact, I had more shit on my bike than I sometimes do for a bike packing race. I had multiple jackets, multiple layers because I was worried because I sweat a lot. I was worried about, you know, having something wet on and having to trade it out. I had an extra pair of socks I never ended up using. I had multiple pair of gloves. I had wind layers. I had bib shorts, bib tights. I had a big puffy jacket. I mean, I had so much shit on my bike. None of it was all that heavy, but it, you know, it was still cumbersome to ride around for 24 hours, all this shit on your bike. It was mostly just clothes. And my system wasn't all that great. So I had bib shorts, and then I had like these Rafa bib tights, like full length ones. But in order for me to put them on, I had to get completely undressed, and I did that twice. And the first time it was fine because I was like stripping all this stuff off at the Verde River on the way down from Williams, and it was like hot out, and I was taking all this stuff off, and it was great. But you know, it probably took me 15 minutes to pack my bike back up because I barely had room for everything. But then that night when I wanted to put my tights back on, I didn't do it until we got to the pavement below Stoneman Lake. I waited too long to do it because I was still pretty warm climbing. But then the wind picked up, and it was super cold, and I literally had to take all of my clothes off and then put them back on in the dark. And that took me to another sort of chilled level. And that was sort of the beginning of the end for the warmth for me, because the wind sucked all the warmth right out of me. And at that point I was pretty shattered. And that was with about 6 hours to go at that point when I stripped all my clothes off and changed. So that was not ideal. Next time I would bring stuff I could slide over the top of what I was wearing and not have to get completely undressed. I mean, it sounds like a silly thing. It's only a couple minutes, but when you're cold and having trouble getting warm, that extra warmth that you just lost, I never really got it back.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was clothes. That was what you brought?
I just brought clothes, lots of clothes. When I finished, I had everything on except for an extra pair of socks, which I don't think I really could have fit in my shoes anyway. It wouldn't have helped, but I had everything. I had my big puffy jacket on, my hood over the top of my helmet, and just, pedaling
Dang.
so slowly.
So
So
slowly.
slow. So slow. Yeah. Mostly just because I didn't want to get wet going uphill, and I didn't want to get cold going downhill. So it was like really managing the wind over my body.
And did you
And
wear
that's
pants or just like
just
tights?
those tights. Yeah.
Just the tights.
And those worked out pretty well. I mean, my legs were never cold. It was just my core, my feet, and
Yeah.
my hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pogies on my hands would have been awesome, but I didn't have any.
Nah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess with time you learn
Yeah.
equipment. Because with me, I've done one big effort. It was supposed to be a bike packing trip, but my partner had to call out, and I was like, well, if you're gonna call out, I mean, I don't really want to continue. So
Yeah.
and that's always been questions of mine is like, what do you bring? I know what to bring for 100-mile ride.
Right.
Nothing. 2 water bottles because I know
Yeah.
I'm going to get it done. But
Yeah.
with anything over 100 miles, it's like anything can happen. And so it's interesting because you didn't bring anything to sleep on.
No. Yeah. I was just going to send it, or or not. I was just going to go for it, and it didn't matter
Okay.
to me if it took me 30 hours or whatever. I was just gonna. I mean, my goal anyway was to keep on going. My hip allowing me to, and thankfully it did. So yeah, I was just gonna go for it.
Dang.
Yeah, but I felt prepared. I mean, I had way more clothes than Jacob did. I mean, Jacob was like, I'm finishing in under 24 hours. I'm gonna send this thing. I felt like I had twice as much shit on my bike than he did.
Yeah.
I definitely had more clothes than he did. But I got more cold than he did, and I don't know if that would happen every time. These things can go either way. I mean, if him and I rode together again, maybe he'd be the one that was cold. I'm not sure. I definitely have a issue managing moisture, so I think that had a lot to do
that
with
could
it.
be an indicator. And then also what you ate too. I mean, maybe he just ate one extra French fry. That could have just been that much more fuel.
It was interesting watching him eat. I was like, wow, I mean, that was actually the first time him and I had ever ridden together. I know who he is. We were acquaintances, but that was the first time we'd ever ridden together. He's generally pretty fast, and I'm pretty militant about eating calories because I know that I have to. And like for the first 8 hours, I was like, Jacob, have you eaten anything? I mean, he had some food at McDonald's, but it was like he was not eating with the frequency and regularity that I was. And so I was starting to question, like, is he going to be okay later? Is he going to bonk? He never did. I would have if I had, well, I think I would have if I had eaten as little as he did. But again, I'm the one who ended up getting super cold. He didn't. So it worked for him. I don't know if he's like that all the time. I didn't want to eat all the time, but I forced myself to, knowing that it was sort of the key. Having done these things enough, I knew that I just had to put the fuel in. Still caught up with me later in the night.
It's gasoline, and
yeah,
you got to force it. It sucks. Well, sweet. Here, we're gonna pause it for just a second.
Yeah, no worries.
So we'll be right back in after this short break. All right. Thanks for waiting, everyone. We're back. Dana, we had a little user error. I didn't update my Zoom, so
yeah, but now you're an official unlimited Zoomer.
Now Stoked podcast is a business.
Now it's official.
There
you go.
And so, Dana, where were we?
I have no idea.
Ah, man,
I was cold. I don't remember.
I know. You don't remember.
but yeah.
So yeah, we went over. That was the hardest point mentally, huh? Just being super cold coming in last 40 miles.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we were talking about equipment. You brought a bunch of clothes.
All the clothes.
And a bunch of food, huh? I mean.
Yeah, actually, so my food strategy. So typically how I do these things, when I'm going to do a big effort, I kind of guess how long I'm going to be out there, add a little bit, and then divide, that time by 250. Just actually, I try and figure out how many hours I'm going to be out there, and then multiply by 250 calories per hour. And that's generally what I try and consume regularly. That seems to be my limit. If I try and go over 250 per hour, my stomach goes a little bit south. And if I'm under that, I usually get a little depleted. So I actually had most of the calories I was going to need for the day already on my bike, because I wanted to pick things I knew I was going to be able to eat and would be predictable on my stomach. And so I had a shit ton of scratch. I had a bunch of beef jerky and some beef sticks, which I generally totally dislike unless I'm like 8 hours into a bike ride, and then it's the best thing ever. And then I had some sort of scratch gummies and that sort of thing. And then some maple syrup stuff that's by this company out of Canada. What the hell is it called? Endurance Tap, I think. Um, 500 calories in a flask, and it's like maple syrup and ginger and salt, and it's amazing. I mean, you can just crush 500 calories if you really needed to, and it goes down super easy, digests great. I'm totally hooked on that stuff. And then I knew I could supplement what I had by stopping at McDonald's at least once. We ended up stopping twice, and then grab stuff at the gas station. So the only food I bought en route was twice at McDonald's, which I also never eat, but it's great when you're in the middle of one of these efforts. And then I bought 2 Snickers bars at the gas station in Camp Verde. Otherwise, I had everything on me I needed. And I ended up having extra at the end because I didn't eat for like the last 4 hours.
Oh,
So,
probably, yeah.
yeah,
Which didn't
because
help with the
I
cold.
I didn't want to take my gloves off, and my bottles were frozen, which had a lot of calories in it. So that was I should have been. I mean, I knew I was not making good choices, but I just wanted to keep moving. It was kind of like, okay, what do I do? Do I stop and take my gloves off and slow down, or do I just keep on going? I mean, it worked out in the end. I maybe would have been a little bit more comfortable if I had tried to keep fuel in the fire. But I just wanted to get it over with at that point. So I think if it had gone on any longer, that would have been a tactical error. It worked out.
Yeah. And there's things you
Yeah.
can control and there's things you can't.
Yeah. So
Water
I'm usually,
bottles freezing.
yeah, that was, yeah, but I don't know what I would do next time if I rode it in the cold. Would I put it on my back? I mean, I think a lot of the reason why the water bottles freeze is the air is flowing over them. So it makes them cold fast. If I had had a bladder on my back, body warmth would have kept it a little warmer. It would have been out of the wind. Maybe that would have kept it from freezing. I could have put a frame bag in and then had a bladder in there. That might have helped. So there's lots of little things I could have done to stop that from happening. I guess when it happened, I wasn't surprised, but I hadn't planned for it in advance. So that's something to sort of be aware of, that, that happens when you're out there. The water bottles freeze and then you can't drink.
Which
Yeah.
if it was longer than 4 hours, that would have been a really big problem.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. It wasn't a big deal in the morning because, we're still early. It was fresh, so it was no problem. But in the evening, it sort of caught up with me.
And then how was recovery? I mean, with an effort like that, it must have taken you a week.
Yeah, I was so it's interesting, my hormones tend to get a little out of whack after these sorts of things. I get emotional, and you have these post-event sort of depression things, not bad, but it's like kind of like my emotions are sort of all over the map, and my body felt pretty good. I was actually muscularly sore the next couple days, which actually doesn't happen to me that often when I do long bike rides. Every time I do a hike in the canyon, I can barely walk for days because I'm so sore. But typically, even after a multi-day bikepacking trip, I'm not muscularly sore, but I was after this. And so, yeah, I didn't actually ride, mostly because I didn't have time during the week, but I didn't ride for a whole week. And then when I went out on the following weekend, this past weekend, I felt okay. I didn't try and ride really hard. I was just kind of recovering, and I feel pretty good now. And super happy that my hip feels as good as it does.
And that's good too. So your hip was, I'm sure, sore, but I mean, you don't see any worsening condition
No,
conditions?
and that's a little weird to me, because through like 3 weeks ago, my hip hurt so bad. I was like, oh, I definitely need to have surgery. And then I just kept doing my PT exercises, and I went to my PT, and then it kind of just went back to baseline. So I expected it to flare up like it had been, and it didn't. And I don't know what to think about that. Like, I don't even know why I got sore a few weeks ago. I'm not really sure what I did to aggravate it. I thought for sure this is the hardest thing I've done in months. If anything's going to flare it up, it's going to be this. And it didn't. It feels exactly the same as before I started. It hurts all the time. I mean, it hurts sitting here right now, but it's like just enough to not be at the tip of my mind all the time. I can kind of shove it in the background. But if it just gets a little bit more painful, it kind of captures my attention, which is hard. Chronic pain is really challenging, and thankfully mine is just below the threshold most of the time.
Good. Well, not good too. We want to get that hip better,
Yeah,
but
I'll just, I sort of feel like I don't have a choice, right? I got to deal with it one way or the other. And if that means surgery and recovery, then that's fine. If it means dealing with the pain all the time, I'm just going to do it. And now that you're a dad, that sometimes you like, okay, I just got to do this because I got to set a good example for my kid or
yeah.
whatever. I got to do this because I got to be around to be a dad. And so I just suck it up sometimes.
Yeah, no, and it's so true. I mean,
Yeah.
that switch, from being an independent person to now like having a family, it's like, oh, no, I choose to do this. I can't do something because I need to be there for my family, or
Yeah.
I need to do this for an example for my daughter, so
Yeah.
she grows up, she can look back and go, oh, dad, that's really cool. I'm glad
Yeah.
you did that,
Yeah.
Well, is your hip like bone on bone?
No, my joint spacing is actually pretty good. I kind of wish it wasn't, because then I could have insurance pay for a new hip, which has a shorter recovery time and better outcome. The surgery that I would need, so I have 3 things going on in my hip. I have a torn labrum, which is in pretty rough shape. That's super common, not that big of a deal, but I also have a cyst in there right next to that. It's not clear to me how much of an issue that's causing, but there's a pretty large cyst in there. And then the bigger issue is that I have what's called FAI. I'm probably going to butcher pronouncing this right, but I think it's femoral acetabular impingement, I think is what it stands for. Basically, my femur is misshapen and acting as a pinch point every single time I walk and pedal, and it's just crushing my labrum. And so if I had surgery, they would snip out the torn labrum, remove the cyst, and reshape the head of my femur to stop it from pinching every time. And that's what the long recovery time would be. It's like 9+ months of recovery time. Whereas if you get a new hip, it's like 5 or 6 months. And the outcome's not as great. And so it's really hard for me to commit to having surgery to be out for 9 months when I'm still able to do things like this. Yes, I'm in pain every time, but I don't know. It's like,
You're still doing it.
I'm still doing it. And
Yeah.
so signing up to have surgery, which, surgery is a big deal. I've had enough of my life, and I don't, uh, I don't always think that I made the right choice. And so it's hard for me to commit to having surgery, doing anesthesia, getting cut open, reshaping my, the body that God gave me, and crossing my fingers and hoping that I'm better after 9 months. And so it's really hard to commit to.
Mhm.
If I get to the point where the pain is so bad that I can't be a good person anymore, and I can't do the things that I love, and then I'll just do it and cross my fingers and hope for the best, and then be the world's best PT patient ever.
Ever.
Yeah.
It'd be the best PT athlete.
Yeah, that's right.
That's awesome. And is there any is there anything, it's hard to word this, motives or kind of things that you think about when you're 150 miles away from home?
Yeah. So it's simultaneously no thoughts and all the thoughts. At any moment, I might not be thinking about anything. And then I might be thinking about everything. Sometimes I have these intentions. I'm going to go out for this long bike ride, and I'm going to think about this really deep thing. Several months ago, my dad was sick and about to pass away, and I think I'm going to go out for a long bike ride, and I'm going to think about my dad the whole time. And sometimes you're not thinking about it, and then maybe that's exactly what you need. Sometimes you are thinking about it. On this particular ride, I thought about a lot of things. I thought about my dad, who had recently passed away. I thought about, wow, this is awfully selfish of me to do these things, to leave my family at home. what if I freeze to death out here, which was never going to happen, but you think about it. What if my front fork breaks and I eat shit and die or break my face or whatever? Like, oh, this is really selfish. But at the same time, I sort of feel like putting myself out there and having these experiences makes me a better person. So the risks seem worth it to me. One of my main motivations for riding faster sometimes is so that I'm not gone as long. I want to ride fast. I'm competitive. I want to put myself out there. I really want to challenge myself. But almost always the first thought I'm having is I need to ride fast so I can get home. Because I want to have this adventure and I got to cram it into the shortest time period possible. So I can be home for my kids. I can be home for my wife. I can get all my work done. Because I don't have the luxury of just dragging it out. And then if I don't ride faster, then I have less of an adventure. So for me, that's a big motivator these days for trying to go as fast as possible, is to just try and cram as many miles and its experiences into as short a period as time so I can just get home. So when I'm out there at a mile 150, I think, okay, I can't just sit around and dawdle and whine about how tired I am or whatever. I got to get home. So that's a big motivator for me.
That's interesting because that's exactly what I face. I mean, it's the family now with a daughter. It's why am I doing this? It's so selfish. Why did I decide to get on my bike today? And especially when I have something on the calendar, I can't not train, but every time I seem getting out there and I do, like, let's just say it's a 65-mile gravel ride that I have, mile 40, I'm like, what the heck am I doing? Why am I doing this? I'm hungry. I'm
Yeah.
tired. I'm sore. I'm crying for some reason,
Yeah.
like I'm just
Yeah.
crying and I don't know why I'm crying, but why you're crying. It's that same, like,
Yeah.
there's thoughts and no thoughts.
Yeah.
And I'll even call Kenzie sometimes on my ride and just be like, hey, I love you. I'm almost there.
Yeah.
I'm coming home, just to see if, like, okay, cool. She's doing stuff. She doesn't need me. Okay. I could get back into the mindset of, like, just ride your bike. But it's so funny. I don't think it changes, especially, once you have a family, or even if you don't have a family. I mean, it could just be you have a girlfriend and you just want to get home to her. But
Right.
now having a family, it's like 100 times what it used to be. I used to be able to be like, I got nothing to do today besides bartend tonight, I'm on my bike all day.
Yeah.
Now it's not that.
Yeah.
I'm super stoked to get out on my bike, and then you're out there and you're like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I do think it's worth it, but yeah, there's a sort of a guilt associated with being out for so long. So yeah, I think it's important to have enough energy left also when you get home to be able to attend to the people that you care about.
Mhm.
And so there's that aspect of it too. It's like not just getting home, but then getting home and being a good human and recovering in time and just cramming in the sleep too,
Yeah.
just so that you're around. Like, I was gone that whole 24 hours and I'm typically the one who does the vacuuming and the laundry and that sort of thing. And so I had to make sure that shit got done on Sunday,
Mhm.
after sleeping a little bit. So,
Totally.
Yeah.
It's almost, you got to get back into dad and husband character mode,
Yeah.
where you can't be, this is my personal experience. You can't be as selfish as riding your bike when you get home to put your feet up and lay on the couch,
Right.
because your wife needs you and your baby needs you, or your kids need you.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, all right, done. Whew, that was a great ride. Honey,
Yeah.
can I
Now
get
I'm
a
gonna lay around
beer?
all day. Yeah.
No,
Not my house.
I'll be sleeping. I'll be sleeping in the backyard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, no,
Yeah.
that's really.
I think it's also really important. And I mean, I think your wife is probably this way too. Like my family's very supportive of me doing this, these sorts of things. And I'm so grateful for that because they don't have to be. And so I'm so grateful that I'm able to get out and do these things. I'm 47 and I don't want to slow down. I want to keep doing these things. Like every year I want to do more. But I have to balance the desires that I have on the bike and the adventures I want to have with, work and family and that sort of thing.
Totally. It's vacation time.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, totally.
choosing
Yeah.
it wisely. But I feel that, and it's cool because, you know, most people don't understand like kind of what goes into it to plan for an adventure like what you just did, or to even commit to training or racing, or, you know, what it, because those are things that you don't get paid for. Those are things that you're choosing to do, you know,
Right.
leaving your family and taking those times to yourself. But it's what makes you you, though, which is
Yeah.
which is why your family loves you so much, you know. And same in my experience too. I don't know
Yeah.
who I would be without it, right?
Yeah.
It makes you happy, and I get all my demons out that I need to on even a 20-mile ride, just
Yeah.
to kind of reset. So, and
Yeah.
that's, oh
Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
no,
Yeah. Yeah.
go.
Yeah. I was just thinking another thought that I had while I was out there, one that I constantly have when I'm having these adventures. At some point during a big event or ride, I end up being really grateful that I have the opportunity to do these things. I mean, even, it sounds like, oh, I suffered in the cold and my hip hurt, and oh, I was suffering. But I mean, the reality is, like, I have the opportunity and the privilege to be able to do these things. A lot of people don't. And I don't want to take that for granted. Um, my family's healthy and I'm mostly healthy, and I have the means to be able to do these things. And sometimes I get teary eyed thinking about just the ability to be able to go do these things and have these experiences. Some people don't choose to, but a lot of people don't have the option financially, or because they're working 2 jobs or whatever it is. And I'm just beyond grateful that I can do these things. It's fast, slow, whatever it is, but I'm out there breathing the air and seeing the sunrise and seeing the sunset and having my bottles freeze. It's all awesome.
And feeling completely human.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's so true. You really do. And almost like when you are closest to death, not death, but, you know, when you are on your edge is almost when you feel most alive. And
Absolutely.
that's when
Yeah.
you cherish your, you know, the people that are in your life the most, is when first they're not there, and then also when you are at your most vulnerable. I think that's why we still continue to ride the bike,
Yeah. Yeah.
or run a trail, or kayak rivers, or raft, or hike, you know, whatever it is. But no, that's beautiful.
Bikes, dude.
Bikes, dude. So stoked. Um, well, I think, you know, before we wrap this up, you know, I am new to the podcast world. So I know a handful of people that I think would be a good fit for the podcast, but I also want to ask you, like, who do you think you would want to listen to next? Maybe like it was a cool adventure, or it could be like a friend who's doing something cool within the community. Because the Stoked podcast is not just about biking. It's not just about, you know, ultra endurance, but it's about like health and fitness, and overcoming adversity. So it's not just cycling or running, or, you know, the ultra world. You know, it's going to be more. And I just want to hear people's stories, you know, because
Yeah.
it's so cool to hear your story on the Verde Randonnee. So
Yeah.
is there anyone that you would, you know, want to listen to, or
Yeah. So I have a few people I'm sort of thinking about, but I think one thing that, for me, is that, I want to hear from people who, like you said, are just stoked to be doing what they're doing and valuing the experience. And it doesn't matter to me if they're fast or slow. I want to hear from people who are the most happy or getting the most joy out of doing what they're doing. I'd also like to hear from some women. Not just a bunch of white dudes all the time in this
cool.
environment. So I'd love to hear from some women who are stoked to be out there and hear about their experiences on what they're doing. Speaking of, I think like talking to Kate Boyle would be awesome. Her experiences that she's had after a car wreck, and just the successes she's had in mountain biking and endurance riding would be awesome. I think talking to Ezra, Ward Packard would be kind of fun.
Absolutely.
He's always stoked about everything.
Cool.
So I
I'm
think that would
definitely
be,
gonna. He's on the list too, and I've
Yeah,
only
yeah.
met him at REI,
yeah,
which is so funny. I've only met him at REI, but we know so many acquaintances, yet we've never ridden together or met.
Yeah.
So Ezra, Kate.
Yeah, Chase Edwards would be awesome too. She's a local mountain biker in town who's pretty much crushed everything she's ever done and had some challenges the last couple years in her life. So I think hearing from her would be amazing. I'd also think having Austin from Flag Bike Rev on would be really cool. He has the whole crew at Flag Bike Rev has done an amazing job at stoking the interest in getting new trails built in Flagstaff, and Austin in particular has really been a huge driving force in making sure that people get out there on dig days on Thursdays. And I think he should be commended and sort of recognized for his efforts in this arena. And so, yeah, listening to him be stoked about building new trails and what it takes to have that, I think would be really cool.
Sweet. Yeah. That they are doing some amazing things, which is the wildfires and the runoff has been so tragic in the Coconino County. Most of the trails have been wiped out, and the community's coming together and really building.
Yeah, I'm totally psyched on all the new trails that we're getting. It's just incredible how many new miles of single track we've gotten in the last 6 months. So
yeah,
it's incredible, and it wouldn't be there if it wasn't for people out there volunteering their time.
Totally, and no one's getting paid for it. Which
Yeah.
and Flag Bike Rev is even giving out like fun knickknacks like gloves and raffle prizes and stuff like that, which is a huge force and why people are probably showing up too. But cool,
and,
thank you for.
And Forrest from the Forest Service, whose last name I don't know, but his first name is Forrest, has been, he's been the one sort of leading the charge from the Forest Service and getting these trails built, getting him on and hearing about his challenges and getting that going would be really cool. I mean, I commend the Forest Service for getting on board and getting this shit built. It's easy to talk about and plan, but it's another thing and to implement it and make it happen. So kudos to him too.
Sweet. I'm gonna reach out to every single one of these people.
Awesome.
And get it on the schedule. So Dana, thank you for those guys. And and I also, a part of this is just I want to meet new people too. It's a good outlet for me to meet people and to hear people's stories, but also to go ride and to build more of a community within the Verde Valley, Coconino County. I mean, we're really one area. We share the same trails and land. So
this place is amazing.
It's phenomenal. I'm growing a garden right now.
That's awesome.
I got tomatoes, zucchini, lettuce. Flagstaff, it's done.
It's cold up here right now.
I'm a bike ride away,
Yeah, totally.
So well, Dana, dude, thank you so much for sharing your story and taking the time to be the first Stoke that we're having on the podcast. And I'm super excited to hear more and to be a part of your events that you put on. So next year I already want to do the Stagecoach. And
nice.
Pinions and Pines, man, has been on the radar for 3 years now, and I just need to pull the trigger.
Come on out. Yeah, it's great.
I know.
It's a great experience. The community, I mean, one of the things I love about the bikepacking events is that, we're racing and we're competitive, but like once you get out there after a few hours, like everybody's in it together and being supportive, and then the camaraderie that happens at the finish line and everything. I just love the community that is built around these events. Like that's the reason why we come together and do it, but the race ends up just sort of becoming the vehicle for the experience that we have. And I just love scoping out the route every year, and it gets me out there sort of exploring. That's why I change it every year. But just to be able to have play a role in providing this experience for people, I really truly value. So I'm totally into it. And then the Verde Valley Randonnee is just a sort of another way to get people out and riding. And so I want to encourage anybody who's listening to come ride the route, start wherever the hell you want, ride it in whatever direction you want, and just go enjoy it. It doesn't matter how fast you go or how slow you go. It's a fantastic loop, and with so much variety in terrain, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. Come give it a shot.
And I'll throw the link in the description. So if anyone, wants any more information, Dana, I'll have you email me that. So
Great.
I can put it down in the show notes so people can just go explore that, see how you can do it and so forth. And that way,
maybe wait till it gets a little warmer.
That's why I haven't done it. I was like, it's warm here, but you go up to
it's a big day. Yeah.
7,700 feet. No way.
Yeah.
And it's a huge day.
It is that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of climbing. And one of the drawbacks of having done it when I did is that, there was so much night riding. Almost half the time was in the dark. Thankfully, I've seen everything. But like, if I was doing it for the first time, I'd be kind of bummed to have ridden half of it in the dark, because it's gorgeous out there.
Oh, it is so gorgeous.
Yeah. So
That
when I do
is
it again, I'll probably try and go in the other direction and try and do it when there's a whole lot more daylight.
Or start in Cottonwood at 4 a.m. in September, and then end here, so you're not freezing cold, the last 40 miles.
You're already planning.
Why do you think I moved here?
Nice. Yeah, go give it a shot. I feel like, when I finished, I was like, oh yeah, it's a pretty respectful time. I was super psyched to finish in under 24 hours, but there's no doubt in my mind people could go a whole lot faster. So it'll be interesting to sort of see if that becomes a thing that people want to chase. I don't care if people go fast or not. I'm just happy to have people just go ride the route, but it'll be interesting to sort of see if people keep trying to chip away at how fast they can go. For me, it's more important that people go and have the best experience they can. I don't care how long it takes.
That's awesome.
If you go fast, great. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Dana, we'll wrap it up.
Cool, man.
And yeah, once again, I want to thank you, and I look forward to. Sorry, that's why the baby's.
No, I love it. I love it. I can't wait to see the baby in person.
Yeah, she's adorable. She's like this beautiful redhead, which we don't know where it came from. Just like, oh, she's gonna be a fiery one for sure.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting you on another episode here in the future. Hopefully, maybe we'll do it like right before Opinions and Pines, and we can kind of do a debriefing.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
Where, like the course gets challenging.
That'd be great.
We'll plan it in the future, but
awesome. Well, good luck with the podcast, and I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to sort of just run my mouth for a little while and chat with you about bikes and experiences and family and all that stuff.
Absolutely, Dan. Thank you.